Okay, we're live.
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the online event for the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. Normally, we hold this day on March 21st, which is the anniversary date where we commemorate the Sharpeville Massacre in South Africa. 7,000 people gathered for protest on March 21st, 1960 in Sharpeville. They were demonstrating the pass laws. In South Africa at the time, the pass laws were a systemic part of the apartheid regime there. And they decided that day that they're going to leave their passes at home and they were going to march and they were going to demonstrate it. They were all unarmed and they approached the police station in Sharpeville peacefully, nobody doing anything. And officers panicked and they shot and killed 69 people and injured 180 more. Many of them were women and children. And it really played a big role in the dismantling of, it started something towards the end of apartheid, which didn't happen for many years later. But it was an historic event that we can never forget. The United Nations has declared March 21st as the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. We first started doing this back in the mid-90s and from the area council. And we continued for a long time. We got away from it. We've been back now for 4 or 5 years doing this event where we try to bring communities together from, Hamilton has so many different cultures and ethnicities. And we're really lucky to have that. And we come together to commemorate, to have a conversation throughout the day about what's happening in the world today, what we can do about it, and what people are doing about it. And this year, COVID hit us, and of course, we didn't want to just cancel it. We said, okay, let's do it June 20th, because everything will be fine by then. We'll be able to have it at the hall and everything. Asked everybody to stand by. But here we are, June 20th, and we're still facing a lot of restrictions. We can't gather as we would like to. But the event goes on. And given the happenings of the last couple of weeks, and the anger and the hurt and the pain, I'm glad that we didn't just decide to cancel. So we've got a good variety of speakers from different backgrounds with us today. We hope you'll stay for the whole event. Find us if you're watching us on our Facebook page or on our Twitter link. So before I go any further, though, I want to just acknowledge that I want to take the opportunity to do a land acknowledgement and acknowledge that we're on stolen lands cultivated by stolen labor. This land was stewarded by the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe people and other nations that lived and traveled through it over the years, and it's covered by the Dish with One Spoon Treaty. In this recognition, we identify and understand and resist the system whose needs have created a supremacist culture that has affected us all in a variety of different ways. We're here today to recognize our common struggle against it, and we work together to dismantle it. My name is Darren Green. I'm president of the Hamilton Steelworkers Area Council. Welcome. Enjoy the day. Enjoy our time. We've got a cram-packed agenda for the 2 hours. I want to thank you for joining us. Keep up the fight. You know what? We'll get this done. We'll get it done. So I'm going to pass this over to Kai Lai from the Steelworkers.
Thank you, Darren. My name is Kai, K-I my first name, and L-A-I, Lai, my last name. And I also want to welcome everyone to the belated International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. I am the National Human Rights Coordinator for the United Steelworkers, and I work in the Education and Poverty Department. And first thing I must say to you is that I bring greetings from Ken Newman, the National Director. All right, so here we are. And one of the things that the Planning Committee in past years have done, the Planning Committee consisting of Hamilton, social justice community partners and activists and the steel workers, we've thought, okay, so we're going to plan this day. What kind of a day is it going to be, right? Because, when you deal with racial discrimination, things can get heavy. So how do we actually recognize this and make this a memorable family event? So we thought we would do it in the context of celebration. And I've said this before at these events, that yes, we are here to celebrate. But in addition, we have to also recognize and reckon with discrimination, because without that happening, there wouldn't be this day, the International Day for the Elimination of Racism, of racial discrimination. And so Darren started with a date, March 21st. I want to bring you to a date that, since that day, this stuff to be reckoned with has been forefront internationally. And that day was May the 26th. And that was when George Floyd was killed in Minneapolis. Not the first black man in America killed, but someone in the line of many, many, many historically. So the first thing I want to do today, before I go further, is to acknowledge and respect and pay respect to Black Lives Matter. And so that stuff has happened in the US. And so I know that in Canada, often people say, well, that's the US. That's different. There's something common in whatever has happened to racialized people in the US and what has happened to racialized and Indigenous people in Canada right here, including in Hamilton. And I want to make that common connection. Darren used a word to mention it. He said supremacy. Okay, that is a tough word, but let me say what it also is. It is colonialism. Okay, let me translate that into English. It is called systemic discrimination, and systemic discrimination against who?
Yeah. Let me,
against
I'm just going to take my...
who are predominantly black, brown, and other racialized groups.
Yeah, everything
It is
up of
discrimination against those groups.
I just want to make the connection specific.
Context and the context of racial discrimination. So I'll just say it, let's go to the color black in Canada. One of the most controversial ones was someone who fell off her 27th floor apartment balcony.
Everything on mine
Her
is
name
up.
was Regis Korchinski.
What?
And what makes this exceptional? There was a whole lot of police in her apartment when she fell to her death. So to this day, there's an inquest, there's an inquiry. There's no definitive thing. But I note the presence of a young black woman and the presence of police in her apartment when she fell out of it and died. That I know, without saying here's exactly what happened. There's something else I note, back to the whole thing of colonialism and systemic discrimination specific to us in Canada, and that is with Indigenous issues. So most people will have heard the name Alan Adam. Who's Alan Adam? Alan Adam is the chief of the Athabasca Chippewa First Nation, who was beaten in a parking lot, caught on video for having an expired driver's license. An Indigenous person. The last one I want to deal with is someone called Chantal Moore. Chantal Moore lived in New Brunswick. Why is this significant? Because Chantal Moore was the First Nations woman, and she was shot by police. And so those are examples of groups and people in Canada who suffer from the same systemic colonialistic discrimination as people do in the US. And so I'm saying that on this day of celebration, we also need to recognize and reckon with the very issues that make this day a noted day for the elimination of racial discrimination. The last thing I want to speak about just before I hand over is, obviously, we are here on June 20th because we couldn't do this day on March 21st. And why is that? It's because of the COVID virus. And as a pattern of discrimination,
I don't think there's still any volume. So I'm not sure what happened.
I have no idea.
Because I'm following along on Facebook as well.
Mm.
You guys doing that?
He's working on it. I knew this was going to be awkward.
That's it. Oh, it might be working now.
Okay.
Okay, just stop. We're going to stop talking for 2 minutes and let the streams catch up. It's back. Okay, it's back. Mike says it's back. If folks can hear us now, we've got it fixed. Lyndon, shout out to Uzma. So we're good now. So I'm going to go back to the stream, which has got a little bit of a delay for those that are watching. You'll probably know that I do streams every day, and these things happen all the time. So thank you for tuning in. Sarah, we'll let you take it away now.
No, it's okay. You can go ahead. I think I'm good.
Okay, I love it. We're here and we're awkward. We're definitely in, these historic times. For those that are tuning in for the first time, welcome. For those that have been doing this event every single year, I want to start with the importance of community in a time of hyper-division. And I want to do it from a place of I'll share from my own experience and why I think this event is so important, why I think the organizers of this event are so important, and why I think that although many people are waking up to the realities today, it should be noted, as Darren said in his opening remarks, that this has been an ongoing struggle for the African diaspora, for Black and Indigenous and racialized people around the world for quite some time. And certainly the discussion around the police, the state's monopoly on violence is very, very present today, mostly because of the velocity of information that we have through our shared videos. And I'm gonna like pull back and just try to be like real personal and share with you all that I'm at the end of a very long, personal, and exhausting struggle, like I know many of you are that do this work. And it's tiring and it's exhausting. And for many people who've been doing this multi-generation, I know that Evelyn Murray's up, many other community elders are talking about, you know, their experiences. But for myself, I'll share with you that coming back to Hamilton after leaving in the 90s, you know, I really didn't feel like I was home. A lot of my friends had left. I was just kind of trying to find my way in the city. And fortunately, I kind of got a tap on the shoulder by Evelyn to join a program at the African Canadian Caribbean Association called Afrobics, and to lead seniors in the Black community, the Afro diaspora, in fitness programs. And you know, for the first time, first time since coming home, I really felt rooted back in the community and just how important it was. That we would meet every Wednesday morning, and we would go through our programs. I would hear their stories. They would share with me, you know, their triumphs and their challenges. It was just a really beautiful thing. And you know, that feeling of connectedness is something that I rely on to this very day. You know, when you see the problems that are around you, you can't unsee them. And for people who experience them, I'm always getting asked the question now as a member of parliament, like, can you share with us experiences of racism? And I'm kind of over that. Like, I'm kind of over having to, you know, relive the trauma each and every time I enter into a conversation about racism from my individual perspective. Anybody who's tuned into this who is racialized or is from communities who are marginalized, you will know that those experiences are very traumatic. And without going into too dark of a place, I'll share with you that the conversation in the States around lynching, that in the United States of America in 2020, they didn't have a law against lynching. That's a profound thing. And it's not because lynching is tied to some historical atrocity in America. Legally, it's not a law in America because lynching continues to happen today. It happens by the state's monopoly on violence through police. There are 6 or 7 cases right now of people being hung from trees in the states that are you know, reported as suicides. Every single one of those stories is a trauma that doesn't just impact the families affected by the individual. It is impossible to be a Black person on these lands, to be Indigenous on these lands, and to see these experiences of brutality daily and not also have a post-traumatic stress, not also carry a community collective trauma of the types of violence that we are seeing. State that, and this is, again, a heavy conversation, but we're in a heavy time. When they would lynch Black people in the South, they would leave their bodies to hang from the tree as a lesson to other people in the Black community not to resist white supremacy. That was something that they would do as a message. And when you see the kind of casual, calculated violence that is perpetrated, not just in the States, but by police here, we have too many instances of police deaths, murders, and extreme brutalities right here in this country, caught on film with absolute and complete immunity, that those experiences can't help but be traumatic for everybody. And why is that important? Because we can never forward on anti-racism work in Canada so long as we continue to situate it as being somewhere else. It's also important to recognize the generational struggle. So when I reference, you know, the work of ACA and its impetus in the early 80s, I guess it would have been, and I know, you know, perhaps everyone will talk more to this. And then the emergence of HCCI and the incredible work of Brother Kojo, DJ Ano, Black Lives Matter, with Sarah, all the young people who are taking leadership in this critical time, that these are intergenerational struggles that we just continue to engage in. And why I say that is because I want to set this for the people that are tuned in, not something that's going to happen in a short period of time. Although for many people who are just tuning in now, you may feel like this is a lot of change happening quickly. I certainly do. Certainly the revelations last night of the RCMP's potential involvement in the mass shooter in Nova Scotia is profound. And I think, is going to have a profound impact on the nature of policing, on top of the incredible work of Black Lives Matter and others. But what I wanted to share with you and leave with you guys with is that as you start to feel the pressure, the grind, the weight of the world on your shoulders, it is okay to tap out and let other people tap in. Not let them, but to actually insist and create and build in radical self-love for yourself, to protect yourself against the traumas that are felt in these moments, because they're significant. It is significant for young people to put themselves in the front lines, to be early, truth sayers in our community. To have people suggest that the way that they're doing this is wrong, the tactics are wrong, when we know that respectability and civility have never provided for progress when it comes to dismantling white supremacy. So, in Hamilton, I just want to say that we are unique to the rest of this country in the kinds of coalitions and relationships that are built. This event that has reemerged thanks to the support of the Area Steel Council and all of the other incredible community organizations that will make this work today. This is the roadmap for us moving forward. This is absolutely the roadmap for us moving forward. And while we do it as a collective, what I want to leave everybody with is please do take time for yourself to step back, to allow other people to step forward, to build bigger platforms and have deeper relationships with people. And if you see somebody who you see could be struggling in the moment, please do reach out to them. The trauma is real. The post-trauma of the absolute velocity of the violence that we are witnessing day in and day out is real. The gaslighting is real. And I think that the only way that we can overcome that type of isolation is through solidarity, is through collective action, is through coalition building, is through like a radical self-love and community building of community safety in ways that maybe we haven't seen before. So that's why I'm excited. I'll end by thanking everybody who has been, completely solid throughout all of this. Not just now, but you think back to when we had the community mobilization against street checks, racial profiling. Those conversations they continue to lead to these moments where we just get more and more ground and we reclaim more and more of our own individual powers that people have been traditionally politically estranged and legally estranged. So I think that's been about 5 minutes. I'll share with you this, that I was probably burnt out like 3 weeks ago. These last 3 weeks have been very difficult. They're difficult for all of us. I'll share with you in a candid way that I didn't know that I'd be prepared to even get up in this space right now in this moment. This is the last political thing I'm going to do for probably about a week. I'm going to step back and try to, exemplify my own advice to people, because it has been pretty heavy. And I just ask that for those of you who, maybe are sitting at home wondering what you could do, what you should do, that for those of you who are wondering what you would have done during civil rights, during apartheid, you're doing it now. You're doing it now. And you have a choice moving forward, whether you're going to do more and contribute more, or whether you're going to, maybe think what you're doing right now is enough. That's for you to decide. That's for you to determine in this moment whether you're doing enough in this new civil rights movement to support and lift up and uphold anti-racist work in the city, including anti-racist activists who've been on the front lines and targeted for so many ways. So to Sister Sarah Gemma, Kojo, to Darren, to all the incredible people who put this on, I appreciate you. You need to know that I love all of you deeply, everybody who's tuned on here. I love you all very, very, very deeply. And I'll just end there. Thank you.
Okay, are we ready to wrap? Hello, okay, thank you. That was good. Next, we have Evelyn Murray, who is a longtime community advocate for social justice and racism. She's the president of the African Community Criminal Association, the longest serving Black community organization in Hamilton. Welcome, Evelyn. Ooh, I love your background. Hello?
Hello, Kojo.
Hi,
So next up we have Evelyn. Hello. Okay, so Evelyn has been a long-term community advocate for social justice and racism. She's the president of the African Community Criminal Association, which is the longest service Black community organization in the city.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good morning. I'm in the fine city of Windsor in my mother's backyard. So hope the neighbors aren't talking too loudly. Thank you so much to the organizers for going ahead and planning this important event. It has been over 54 years since the massacre in South Africa took place, and subsequently the declaration was made by United Nations in 1966. And we want to acknowledge on whose shoulder we are doing this work. It started from brutality and from racism, and today, 54 years later, this battle continues. So, but as we take time to reflect on this day, I'd like to take a few minutes, my time, to talk about another important international initiative, which is in line with today's program. In 2014, the United Nations declared the International Decade for People of African Descent, and acknowledging the following: whether as descendants of the victims of the transatlantic slave trade or as more recent migrants, people of African descent constitute some of the poorest and most marginalized groups. They still have limited access to quality education, health services, housing, social security, and their degree of political participation is often low. In addition, people of African descent can suffer from multiple forms of discrimination based on age, race, sex, language, religion, political opinions, social origin, property, disability, birth, or other status. So it was 2015 that the declaration became active, and it goes for 10 years, from 2015 to 2020. This framework presents a solid action plan to take effective measures to address these issues in the spirit of recognition, justice, and development. But 6 years have gone by, and we have 4 years left. 6 years of this declaration has gone by. And when I speak to the average, people on the street, along with some other activists, they're not even aware that we have a declaration for the decade of people of African descent. So I'm calling to action today from the ACCA. I just wanted to bring that up because, we're talking about this International Day against elimination of racial discrimination, and we know that racism hasn't ceased. In fact, the attack on Black bodies have become more proliferous. We are very distraught about what's happening and disheartened of the recent happenings. So I want to call attention to all of us today who's on this call to really bring this issue to your workplace, to talk about the International Decade for people of African descent, and look at how we can move this agenda forward. We acknowledge that through lobbying, efforts by the United Nations Push Coalition a national body, organizing body in Ottawa. We're a Black organization across Canada, situated in Ottawa, trying to push government agenda forward, or pushing the agenda forward for government to take action. And there's been some action plan. The government has, in fact, provided some funding to around health issues. They have recently announced a $25 million for 5 years for Black organizations. That has been given to 3 Black intermediaries to distribute. So it's part of the plan the federal government has outlined. And, while it's not much, it's a start, and it's because of lobbying efforts from organizations like ACA and others across Canada that this has taken place. So I wanted today to bring up the notion of pushing this agenda forward, and that the Afro-Canadian Cabinet Association is recommending that the province of Ontario look at a model similar to that been done in the province of Nova Scotia, where they also developed their own action plan to move the agenda forward on the International Decade for People of African Descent. So the province needs to get more involved in this, so that Canada, in fact, can report better when they go back to the UN to see what the country has done, but also what the provinces have done. So because we live in Ontario, I want to push the idea of Ontario taking an action step in ensuring that the recommendations, the objectives of the decade are in fact given breath, given life through support, financial and otherwise. I also want to encourage us to push the City of Hamilton as community organizations to take action on the International Decade for people of African descent through putting together a team of people who work to the City of Hamilton to develop an action plan that speaks to this International Decade that could be fed up back to the national government. It's been 6 years, as I said, and no one has heard much about this decade. And right now, in the middle of the crisis, both the COVID and the racism pandemic, I think it's timely that we push this agenda forward, and locally, provincially, and of course, we'll continue to push the federal government. But I also think that organizations on the ground can take action steps. So looking at the United Nations Decade for people of African descent, looking at action plans and see how they too can develop some strategies in their organizations, in your space of work, to bring life to these recommendations and this action step. I think it's timely. I think it's appropriate that when many people are calling me and say, what can we do? These are some of the things that we can do to move the agenda forward, to work on elimination of racial discrimination and other intolerances. I want to thank you again for inviting me to be a part of this day, and I look forward to staying online and listening to the other speakers. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Evelyn. We really appreciate your speaking today. Next up, we have Luna,
Legal Clinic. She's the Black Justice Coordinator.
Hello?
Kelowna. Hello? Hey.
Hey,
Okay.
thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Is it my turn?
Yes,
Yeah,
I
I
just
just introduced you.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. All right. Hi. Hello, everyone. My name is Muna Pile, and I am the Black Justice Coordinator at the Hamilton Community Legal Clinic. Through the Legal Clinics initiative, Together We Rise, c'est mieux ensemble, my work focuses on facilitating access to justice for the Black community in our city. I was asked to speak on our involvement with the reinstatement efforts of HARC, the Hamilton Anti-Racism Resource Center. So I'll just give you a bit of a background, as well as how we got involved and where things are at right now. So on April 4th, 2018, HARC officially launched the center. It was a 3-year pilot project meant to offer support, referrals, and resources to individuals experiencing racism. 3 funders collaborated to fund and support HARC. This announcement came after years, actually decades, of community-led efforts. Unfortunately, on February 14th, 2019, less than a year into its mandate, the center was put on pause. This decision was sudden and was done without any consultation with the public. There were few details behind the rationale of this pause, other than the possibility that this interruption could last up to 12 months. We were also told that there was a need for community consultation as the number of cases reported were deemed to be too low. Keep in mind that the project involved 2 community-based committees, the City of Hamilton Committee Against Racism, so CCAR, and the HARC Steering Committee. Neither of those 2 committees were consulted prior to the pause. In fact, based on discussions we've had with members of both committees, 1 report of racism is 1 too many, let alone 3 reports from brave Hamiltonians willing to share their painful experience of racism and hate in the city. Together We Rise connected with community members and agencies who were experienced and knowledgeable about racism and hate crimes. The group met with the funders to seek clarification. We also met with affected stakeholders. Our goal was simple: find out what happened and reinstate the center. I became the unofficial coordinator of the group, who became known as the HARC Community Working Group. Through this group, we embarked on a campaign with the sole objective to reopen the center. We delegated during city council meetings as it became clear that we needed the city to take a strong commitment in effectively combating racism and hate. We put together a set of recommendations along with a list of endorsement by agencies, associations, faith leaders, business owners, and so on. The HARC Community Working Group believed the center had to be a community-driven entity at every step. However, the city had to demonstrate a strong financial commitment as well and support in ensuring its success. Without a doubt, it is due to the efforts of various individuals that HARC is under a different leadership at the city level today. Under John Ario's leadership, a project manager with expertise and lived experience was recently hired. The next steps are now to hire a consultant, followed by a community advisory panel. The city is seeking input from the community regarding the qualifications and experiences of the consultant and the community advisory panel. The survey for that ends on June 30th. Please give your input. And then from June 29th to July 9th, the city will also have community conversations on hate incidents, racism, and discrimination from various marginalized communities. So while the center isn't open yet, we are hopeful with this new leadership, as the community's voice is central in the decision making. Allow me just to shift gear for a moment and inform you also about another campaign that many individuals are working on. The Hamilton Wentworth District School Board partnered with the Hamilton Police Services to have a police liaison program. The school resource officers, so SROs, are tasked with providing education, building relationships, and dealing with incidents. Fortunately, various agencies and services in this city can expertly provide some, if not most, of those services. Given the historical relationships of police with marginalized and particularly racialized communities, given the impact that negative police interactions have on Black youth, given the broken relationship the police has with the queer community in this city, we believe our schools should be free from police. The Ontario Human Rights Code says, case law recognizes that racial profiling is a systemic problem in policing. We know the disproportionate ways racial profiling harms Black youth. Schools have a duty to care for the well-being of these children while in their charge. Schools shouldn't be a place where children feel unwelcome or unsafe. On Monday at 6 p.m., the Board of Trustees of the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board will vote on a motion to terminate the police liaison program and to suspend the program while it is under review. You can act. Please email your trustee. Email them as soon as possible. The HWDSB Kids Need Help group can send you an email template. They can be reached at hwdsbkidneedhelp@gmail.com. You can email me as well at twr.see.hclc@gmail.com, and I can also send you that template. We know the board is committed in identifying and eliminating systemic barriers from schools. Terminating this program and listening to the community is the right step towards that direction. We also know that children have a right to education under provincial and territorial education acts. Human Rights Act also ensure children have access to protection from discrimination. The school board's Human Rights and Equity Community Advisory Committee voted unanimously on June 16 to terminate the police liaison program. The Community Advisory sent a report to trustees to be read on Monday, June 22. Based on community input, data collected from neighborhood school boards who had this program and its own community advisory position, we hope it will encourage the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board to stand in solidarity with Black, Indigenous, queer, and marginalized students through actions and not only statements. Our children deserve better, and we can do better. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mona. We really appreciate what you shared today. Next up, we have a musical performance from a group called The Big Spoons.
Hey everyone, Happy New Year. We know we had our share of ups and downs throughout 2019, and there's always magic in new beginnings. So we just want to remind you that we are beautiful and that we have to give glory to God in every situation. And we hope this blesses you. It's a blessing to see people with their heads up to the sky still. 'Cause honestly, for the same people, life can be so real. I'm amazed by all your strength, I am. And I'm grateful you come through, yeah. So I take this time to stop a moment and show my gratitude. I put my ladder in the air for you. I see what you're doing, yeah, I see what you're going through. Put my ladder in the air, the truth is you're beautiful, beautiful. Now put your ladder in the air for us. Everybody singing together, sing a new song. Put your ladder in the air for love. It's beautiful, beautiful. And we are all the glory belongs to you. All the glory belongs to you, oh God. All the glory belongs to you. All the glory belongs to you, oh God. glory belongs to you, to you. All the glory belongs to you, oh God. You, oh God. Belongs to you, oh God. Oh, and we say,
I just got to tell you for like the last 12 minutes.
But I'm saying it.
I'm not saying that you guys should agree with you, but I think we're gonna replay it one more time. After? Okay, we're gonna replay it after the next year. The next year is the Arabic Maya. We're gonna be talking about his well, the next year is going to be Jeremiah.
Everybody else who just got accidentally left out of the meeting get that started. Until then, we're gonna let Ricky Jeremiah take the stage. Are you here, Ricky? Did I go to speaking? Alright. So I think we're still waiting for Ricky. I would make small talk, but I'm not that small. I'm not saying it.
Yeah, so we we are just dealing with some technical difficulties, as you can tell. Uh, right now, we are waiting on Mr. Ricky Jeremiah. Um, oh, there we go. We have Mr. Ricky Jeremiah ready to go. So, uh, yes, we have Mr. Ricky Jeremiah. Ricky, can you hear us? Ricky, you're on mute. Can you unmute yourself? Ricky,
I'm here.
there you go. Yes, Mr. Ricky Jeremiah. Thank you for joining us. Um, we would like for you to start us off. Tell us a little bit about yourself and let everyone know your story. So I'll hand it over to you, and then you have about 5 minutes or so. Uh, uh, share your story with us. Are you okay?
I'm okay to go.
Okay, it's over to you.
Hey, everyone.
My name is Ricky Jeremiah, and I assuming that some of you had the opportunity to read my story from my incident with the Hamilton police. Forgive me if I'm sounding a little bit distorted, because whenever I have to go through this story, it's a very painful experience. So I want to ask you forgiveness from the beginning. If you had an opportunity, and I'm sure you did, to look at George Floyd in the US, this is exactly what happened to me from the police of Hamilton. The only difference between myself and George is that I lived to tell the story, but George didn't. And the cop in Hamilton kneeled in my groins rather than my neck. But the exact same thing that George experienced is exactly what I experienced. To be honest with you, when I was sent the video from someone to see what happened to George, I really actually couldn't look at it because I lived it. And as we speak about racism, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to understand that when you have an officer, someone who take an oath to uphold the law of the country, when you have the person kneeling on you on the ground, you feel worse than an animal. That was my experience. I felt that day of February 13, 2012. I felt worse than an animal. I've never had a human being kneeling on me like I'm nothing. You know, it don't just break you down physically, it break you down mentally. And for me personally, because I'm a Seventh-day Adventist, and the Saturday before, which was the 12th, I was a preacher at my church, and I want you to imagine coming from the heights of heights, for those of you who know God, and those of you who worship God, and those of you who know how we behave when we go to church, we praise God. And I came from that height the Saturday because there was the preacher in a suit and tie, and only to be like trash on the ground that Sunday morning. It was a total mental breakdown for me. Racism is real, and for anyone today who wants to doubt it, I can tell you that it is real. It is real, and it is a horrible experience to experience racism. And the truth is, you don't have to do nothing. Because for me, I wasn't breaking the law. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I simply asked the police officer why he needed my license when he asked me for my license. Again, because of time, I cannot go through the entire story. But all I asked the officer was, officer, why you needed my license? Because at that time, I was totally confused as to why he needed my license, given the fact that he didn't pull me over. I wasn't doing anything illegal. I was simply parked my car talking to a friend. And instead of the officer just simply say, this is so reason why I needed your license, he decided to threaten me. He decided to pull me out of my car. He decided to threaten to punch me in my face. He decided to handcuff me. He decided to throw me on the ground in the middle of winter without a winter coat. And he decided to make a conscious decision to kneel on me while on the ground, even while being handcuffed on the ground. The truth is, ladies and gentlemen, I came to this country and I saw myself as a model citizen. I own 2 businesses. I'm a driving school instructor. I teach people to obey the law of our city. And I really and truly didn't think it would have happened to me. I didn't think after someone who is a law-abiding citizen, someone who returns taxes, someone who hires people in the city, I didn't think that one day it would have happened to me. But it did. And the fact is this, if it, for me right now, if I could experience what I've experienced, it could happen to anybody else, to our little black boys and our little black girls walking the streets who may not be prepared for such a thing happening to them. And allow me to say this, ladies and gentlemen, is that when you experience what I've experienced, you live in fear. You live in fear of the police. My greatest fear right now, friends, is not even for myself, but for my children. My greatest fear right now is that I have 2 children who born and grew in Hamilton, who you would think would be protected by the police officers. But my greatest fear is that one day they might be driving somewhere, coming home from school or from work, and be stopped by a cop, and you have no idea what the police is going to do to that. It is a fear and a nightmare that I live with every single day. And it is time that the police department do something about what's happening to our children, to our people, to black people on the streets. Now, allow me to say this, friends. I am not blaming every police, because I do believe that we have wonderful police officers. I do believe that there are people who goes out every day and serve us well. They protect our lives. They protect us from being harmed by evil people. I do believe that. But I also know as much as there's good, there are a lot of evil ones. I'm thankful for the opportunity today to join with the group, to join with y'all, to cry out and to call out for justice in our city, to call out for justice in Hamilton, to call out for justice for people who just simply want to make a living. I left Trinidad and came to Canada. And when I came here, it wasn't to be a lawbreaker. I came here to uphold the law. I came here to make a family. I came here to be better with my life. And that was taken away from me. The way how I saw this city before 2012, it was taken away from me. I'm joined with you this morning, brothers and sisters, to fight this fight. I'm joining with you this morning to share my story to the world. I'm joining with you this morning to let people know that racism is not only an American thing. Racism don't just happen across the border, but it happens here. It happens not just in Toronto, but it happens in Hamilton. And there's a lot of cover up. And allow me to say this, friends. The police in Hamilton tried to buy me off for $10,000. They tried to buy me off by saying, if we're going to give you $10,000, you'd have to sign a document saying that you would not relay your story to anybody else. But as you know, I couldn't do that because it wasn't going to be principally enough for me to take the $10,000 and run. For me, it was about telling my story to what had happened to me. For me, it was standing up for my children. For me, it was standing up and having a voice to those who don't have a voice. For me, it was standing up for the young man and the young woman who are on the streets night and day, trying to make a living, trying to do right, and been taken advantage of by our Hamilton police. For me, it was not about taking the $10,000. It was standing up for the principle that what happened to me was wrong and it should not happen to anybody else. And that is why I'm fighting the fight. And that's why I fought the fight, ladies and gentlemen, to stand up for the people who doesn't have a voice, to stand up for the ones who cannot stand for themselves, to stand for the one who doesn't have money to fight, to take a lawyer, to stand for the one who is afraid because it's the police and they're scared of what might happen to them. I encourage this morning the Hamilton police to do differently. Yes, we live in one city. Yes, we can make the city a better place. I want the officers today to know that Black people are not all killers and murderers and rapists. We didn't come here for that. We come here to live like everybody else. You know, one of the question that was asked to me when I went to court by the city lawyer is, didn't I think that the police was afraid of me? Now, I want you to imagine that folks who are listening to me right now, here we have 5 police officers, totally armed. And here I am in my car, sitting, doing nothing illegally, but they're trying to turn the story to say that they were afraid of me. I had to ask the lawyer in the court, let me make sure I understand what you're saying. Are you saying to me that you have 5 cops, trained, fully armed men, afraid of one person sitting in a car, doing nothing illegal? But that is what they want us to believe. They want us to believe that Black folks are people you should be afraid of. You know, ladies and gentlemen, my heart is broken every time I have to say what I'm saying. Because I stood in a courtroom and what I saw is 5 police officers trying to back each other's story. And the entire thing was like a kangaroo court. It was lies and lies and lies and lies upon lies. Police just kept lying and lying and lying in the courtroom. My lawyer had to refer them to the fact that he had interviewed them to date. And he had to refer them to, he said, 3 years ago, you said this to me. And now you're saying this in the courtroom. At what point were you lying? Are you lying now? Or were you lying to me 3 years ago when you took an oath to tell the truth? Yes, we won our case. And even though we won the case, the judge said that racism wasn't a factor in the case. He still didn't give us race as part of what happened to us. The system is covered up. The system is rigged. And we have to do what we have to do, brothers and sisters, to let Hamilton police know that we are human beings. We are not animals. We are not here to kill. We're not here to steal. We're not here to rape. We're not here to commit murder. We are here simply to live a life like everybody else. I encourage you, parents, let's speak to our children. Because like I said before, if it can happen to me who consider myself to be a model city open to anybody else. His friends that believe me. In the morning, before this whole thing happened at my house, we have what we call family worship with my two children, and I was them to respect the Hamilton police. I said to my two children before I left my house that day, don't want you to do anything wrong, and I want you to respect the Hamilton police. A few hours later, I was embarrassed, ashamed. I didn't know how to go back to my children to let them know that the exact same men and women who I told them to respect had knelt on me and treated me like a dog. I encourage your friends, and I'm sorry because right now I'm breaking down because it hurts. It's painful. Right now, whenever I see a police officer driving behind me, even though I'm a driving instructor, even though I teach people to drive, I'm the most nervous wreck on the road whenever a police officer is driving behind my car. I want to thank you for the opportunity this morning to share my story with you. And you have my number, you know my name. If I can help you guys in any way, feel free to contact me. God bless you as we continue to fight the fight until we find solutions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I think oftentimes when you talk about police brutality, it's being talked about like in a far off way, like it's an American issue or it's not happening here or it doesn't impact us here. So what you did today was, I know it was hard, but we really appreciate you spending time with us to break down what it means to be Black and to live in England. This isn't an American issue. There have been people who've been brutalized by police, who've been killed, and worse. And they're not being held accountable. They're not being held accountable. You won the case, but they're not being held accountable because racism still isn't being taught. White supremacy in our policing institution isn't being taught. So we really appreciate you sharing your story. And to be honest, you shouldn't have to. You shouldn't have to traumatize yourself for people to understand this is an issue in our city. So I want to let you know that we really appreciate that you did that for us today with us. Appreciate that. And definitely all of us will need.
Thank you very much. God bless you as we fight the fight together. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next up, we have Corey Grant from the Hamilton Black History Council. We might not have Corey Grant right now.
Oh, they,
He
yeah.
will be on.
Oh, they, hold on.
Apparently I'm echoing, so. Are you muted? Okay, I think it'll stop at me. We're gonna skip Corey Grant now and come back.
No, he's here.
Oh, he's here. Okay, so we have Corey Grant coming up from the Black History Council. Hi, Corey.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How enjoy the little shirts?
Cool.
I'm kidding. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me get a second here. Right, good afternoon, everybody. Corey Grant, one of the co-chairs for the Hamilton Black History Council. Hamilton Black History Council has been supporting youth in Hamilton through the John C. Holland Awards for 24 years. These awards are named after the Reverend John C. Holland. John Holland was the son of an escaped slave and was born and raised in Hamilton. As a result of his tireless work in breaking down barriers faced by the Black community, notably, he lobbied Stelco to hire Blacks. as well as serve as a pastor at our local Stewart Memorial Church. He became the first African Canadian to be named Citizen of the Year for Hamilton in 1953. We would be remiss not to mention that the progress, if any, from that time has been slow. Our Black community continues to be negatively impacted by the consequences of centuries of systematic barriers and anti-Black racism. And so we ask that you unite with us to eradicate those systems that have historically oppressed us. Let us be intentional in how we work together as organizations and as a community. Let us support each other by continuing to build on the work of our great ancestors and community leaders. Let us demand more in education. The Hamilton Black History Council is engaged and unwavering in fighting against anti-Black racism in all spaces, including education, institutions, employment, the legal system, media, and public health. We join our sisters and brothers across the city of Hamilton and beyond as we rise to demand reparations, justice, and equality. George Floyd's plea for breath as a white policeman choked away his life are horrifying and infuriating. The list of lost souls to the hands of violence is too long. As we in Ontario wait for the verdict in the case of Devontae Miller, we are done witnessing brutality and oppression, which is why Black, Indigenous, Two-Spirit, and LGBTQ plus community and people of color, along with our allies everywhere, are mobilizing. We are demanding to find solutions to heal the trauma from centuries of institutionalization and systematic discrimination. We reject leaders who deny the realities of systematic oppression. We reject leaders and loud voices ignorant of the issues, making statements only to walk back their words and feign regret. We expect leaders to reflect and measure themselves and their teams and support learning through uncomfortable conversations now. COVID-19 has highlighted the role personal health and wellness play in our society. Racism is a public health crisis. Now is the time to recreate how we conduct budgets. We are seeking accountability. We are seeking transparency. We are seeking detailed explanations on how businesses, organizations, institutions, committees, and associations adhere to their pledges of equity, diversity, and inclusion. Statements must be connected to commitments. We insist on the following. The number of reported hate crimes in the city and the presence of active hate groups in Hamilton require the immediate reinstatement and funding of Hamilton's Anti-Racism Resource Center. The center's work can begin by conducting diversity audits of all City of Hamilton supported committees and associations and making the results publicly available. We demand the immediate release of a report on the status of training related to improving relations with Black, Indigenous, people of color, and the Two-Spirit and LGBTQ plus community by all Hamilton police officers, EMS attendants, firefighters, and publicly funded educators at every institutional level. We demand the City of Hamilton to lead a collaborative initiative with the province to redesign police service boards. The board must mirror the city's cultural and spiritual diversity, and today it does not. We support the calls for HPS to implement all recommendations in the 2014 report, Police with People in Crisis. We are listening and educating ourselves on what defunding police services principles mean. We demand City Council and senior public servants to do the same. Defunding is about shifting focus, diverting from a portfolio that has failed to deliver strong 21st century returns, and reinvesting in social systems, forecasting more positive and equitable returns. Systems built on accountability and transparency, designed to move toward a more inclusive and fair society are where we should collectively invest. We support the funding, accountability, and transparency. The Hamilton Black History Council stands in solidarity with individuals and organizations focused on social justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. We support the global advocacy work of Indigenous groups, the Two-Spirit, and LGBTQ plus community and people of color. The Hamilton Black History Council would like to take this moment to restate our message to the thousands of gifted young people, allies, and community members we have encountered through our work, which includes hosting the annual John C. Holland Awards. We matter. We are proud of you and your activism. We must all stand together and keep rising. Thank you, everybody, for taking this time to listen and to hear those words. Thank you, and have a great afternoon, and enjoy the rest of the event.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Corey.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Next up, we're going to have Manit, just because I think he's on a break at work. For those who are interested in more information around the funding and what the funding could look like, there's a really cool resource that was created and put up yesterday by Black Lives Matter Toronto. It's a website on defunding police, what that could look like, what the alternatives are, and all the work going on in the states and across Canada right now that's calling for, defunding and demilitarization of police services. You can go to www.defundthepolice.org to find more information. And then there's also a local petition that's circulating around as well, calling for the defunding of the local police here. Courtroom, next up we have Manit. Manit, are you with us?
Yes, Manit should be in. Just let him in. So, I just let them in. So, Manit, are you?
Oh, it says he's connecting to audio.
So while we wait for Manit to connect, we'd just like to thank everyone that has in. To would like to thank the speaker and the speakers that are about to continue to speak later on. And we also have some videos and music performances because of our technical difficulties that we are dealing with. We'll make sure we go through the list of all the speakers, and then we'll follow up with the performances after all the speakers are done. So we hope you hang in tight and stay with us. We're doing this on the fly together. So I think Manit, are you here?
I am, yes.
Okay, there you go. So Sarah will introduce you, and then you can. The floor is yours.
Manit, I don't really have a bio for you, so it might be better if you introduce yourself.
Okay, my name is Manit. I am one of the members of the city committee here in Hamilton, and I've been lucky to be part of celebration. The first time it was revived through Darren and through Ken Stone, which I'm very thankful for. I am a mental health nurse as well as a trucker locally, and that's my profession. And I'm really happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Are you here to? Are you speaking today?
What I have actually decided is to look forward to listening today. I would all the solidarity, but I would like to listen and learn more. That's one of the things I've learned. That it's better to listen at this time. All the progress that has been made with all this, I would like to get updated on that and also learn as much as possible and not as much speak. That helpful.
Okay, cool. So, we will share the link with you so that you can join in online through Facebook and Twitter, and introduce the next speaker. Does that work?
Sure. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. So next, I believe we're going to have. We're changing it up a little bit in the sense that all of the video performances will be at the end of it. So next up, we're going to have Kojo, who's doing the keynote address. Kojo, are you good?
Yes, I'm good. So just before I start, my camera is not working, so that's why you can't see me. But uh, I first would like to thank the steel workers for hosting this event that has been happening for a number of years. I would also like to thank all the speakers for taking time out of their day to talk to us. Um, Dear friends, neighbors, we are in a battle for our existence. Canada is not immune to racism. In fact, Canada in its inception is based on racism through settler colonialism, which stem from the ideas of white supremacy. White supremacy espouses acts, behavior, and attitudes that situate white people or whiteness as sole beneficiaries of land, wealth, social implications, and political rights. In 1867, John MacDonald ushered in residential schools. This work was primarily based on the work of a member of parliament called Nicholas Flood Davin. He commissioned a report that formalized the implementation of residential schools. I want to share with you uh, one of the sections in his report that was submitted to the House of Commons. And you would know that now the House of Commons has become a place that continues to engage in racist and white supremacist behavior. This is what MP Davin says. He says, the Indian is a man with traditions of his own, which makes civilization a puzzle of despair. He has the suspicion, distrust, fault finding tendency, the insincerity, and flattery produced in all subject races. He is crafty, but conscious how weak his craft is when opposed to the superior cunning of the white man. This was in the report that was submitted to the House of Commons. So when we talk about white supremacy and when we talk about this country being racist, these are the sort of comments that we are pointing to. These are some of the examples we are pointing to. And I think it's important for people to know about these historical facts, right? These historical facts. I'll share with you one of the recommendations from the report. And I find this very insidious. And I don't even think most Canadians know about this report. In the recommendations in the report, this is one line. It says some distinction should be made between the treatment of parents who send their children regularly to day school and of those who are either careless whether their children go to school or not, or who are opposed to their children attending school. To the first, an additional ration of tea and sugar might be given. Let's think about that for a second. He's saying that those families, indigenous families, he's saying that those indigenous families that have taken the right to not join indigenous schools should not be given food. And this treatment is one that was done across this country. There are many more examples, and I want to highlight them so that we give context to where we are today right now. 1873, Canada's first policing body, the RCMP, and their main objective or the main reason they were founded was to protect the economic interests of Canada, which included law enforcement towards indigenous communities and nations. And as I mentioned earlier to MP Davin's report, where they're saying, look, we need to have indigenous schools, we need to starve indigenous communities that are in opposition to their indigenous sovereignty. Canada thinks that racism doesn't exist. We can point to the 1910 Immigration Act that prohibited entry of immigrants belonging to any race deemed unsuited to the climate or requirements of the land. 1910, the Imperial Order of Daughter of the Empire petitioning the Canadian government to exclude black men from Canadian society. These are examples, historical examples, historical facts. So these highlight what we describe as white supremacy. And these ideas permeate all aspects of government. And that is why we have a police department that terrorizes Black, Indigenous, and houseless people in this city. We heard from Mr. Ricky Jeremiah. And there are others across this country. Jason Collins, Aisha Hudson, DeAndre Campbell, Sean Thompson, Greg Ritchie, Nicholas Gibbs, Pierre Corillon, Abdi Rahman Abdi, Andrew Loco, Jermaine Kirby, Samia Team, Michael Wade Lawson, Lester Donaldson, Savrana Abdi. We are in a battle for our existence. We are in a battle for our existence. All these historical facts and our family members, our friends that have been lost, that have been brutalized by the hands of this country and police and our institutions, government institutions, educational institutions, healthcare institutions, has brought us to this very moment. And that is why there are calls. There are calls for the city of Hamilton to defund the Hamilton police. The Hamilton police has an operating budget of 170 million. That is why there are calls to defund the police so that that money can be put to food insecurity, anti-racism work, and towards affordable housing. There are demands for the Hamilton police to stop ticketing houseless people for existing in public We are in a battle for our existence. Those demands also go forward to say Hamilton police should halt all purchases of weapons, guns, and rifles with our taxpayers' money. Demands to put a moratorium of the hiring of police constables in Hamilton, given that they continue to over surveil people of color, houseless folks, and we know that there are ties between the Hamilton Police Service and the security services at McMaster. And that is why we are also calling, and there are demands for McMaster and his board of directors to immediately terminate Glenn Dicker's contract. Why? Because he was a former chief of police, and the Ontario Human Rights Commission said he was engaging in textbook racial profiling. There are also demands for the removal of the liaison program across our schools in Hamilton. And please note that this is a provincial call to remove all liaison programs within our boards, because our schools also are sites of white supremacy. It is time we divest also from investing in policing. We spend billions on policing. Hamilton, 171 million. Ottawa, 319 million. Waterloo, 182 million. Halton, 126 million. London, 123 million. Niagara, 154 million. Sudbury, 63 million. Toronto, 1 billion. Add them up, we're looking about northwards of 2 billion. And that is not the whole of Ontario. We are also calling, and there are demands for the Special Investigation Unit to be composed of people completely from Black, racialized, and Indigenous people with no ties of policing, because we know that the police can't be held accountable by other police, as Mr. Ricky Jeremiah alluded to. That is why there are these demands. And so, for our dear friends, our dear neighbors, please sign on to these demands. Please reach out to the organizations that are doing this work to support these demands, because we need to reimagine how we build our society, because we are in a battle for our existence. And I'll leave that with everyone today because my time is up. Remember that this fight is a fight for our existence.
Thank you, Hojo. For anybody who's interested in seeing the demands, we have close to 4,000 signatures now calling to defund the Hamilton Police. And there are lots of organizations who've signed on to these demands as well, including USW Hamilton. So that was just confirmed a couple of days ago. So thank you so much, USW Hamilton and Darren, for supporting these demands as well. For anybody who's interested in finding these demands, reading more about them, and signing on to them, you can check out, it's been shared on multiple platforms, the Space Youth Center on Facebook and Twitter, HWD is Kicking Help on Facebook and Twitter, and I believe HUCI has shared these on Facebook and Twitter as well. And you can sign on not only to the demands, but to continue to stay involved, as this issue is not going away. And so lots of people are engaging in the process and, staying in communication to learn about next steps. Next up, we have Melissa Murray Much, who is a social justice activist and artist and spoken word performance here in Hamilton.
For some reason, my video is not opening up. That's weird. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you quite fine.
Okay.
I just introduced you.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. I'm sorry my video is not working. I don't know why, but my name is Evelyn Murray. I'm an actress, social justice activist. I'm new to Hamilton.
Melissa, I think your mic stopped working.
And I grew up in the United States, so I'm an American, and I would like to perform some spoken word based on media and how media affected me growing up in America. It's long ago. No parents watching or worried. I was happy, I think. Back in those days, on Saturday mornings, I watched cartoons, the Archies, and Scooby-Doo especially. It was our thing. It was what me and my brothers did every Saturday. The neighbors across the street had a better TV than ours, so I parked myself on the wall-to-wall carpeting in their house. Everything was pretty over there and in color. Cartoons in color. The Archies. Before my parents' awful divorce and low-income apartments we lived in a real house, an upstairs and a downstairs, with a backyard and a driveway, with people that looked like me. There was sunlight that poured onto the steps from that little staircase window. I walked ever so slowly up and down, careful not to go too fast, just to catch a few minutes of light cast on those steps. I had this crazy idea as a child that if I walked down the stairs in the part where the sun was shining, then maybe, just maybe, I could look like them. Literally turn into them, the cartoon characters, the Archies, Betty and Veronica. If I walked on the light side of the steps, maybe I could look like them. Because on TV, everybody looked like them, not like me or my brothers or my neighbors. I couldn't figure out why I didn't look like Thelma or Daphne, the mermaids in storybooks, Peter Pan or Wendy. And if I couldn't be a cartoon, then that meant I couldn't be the Brady Bunch or the Partridge Family either. Why? There had to be some kind of mistake. It must be me. Standing in the light will help. At least I thought it would. When my parents broke up, we moved to the bad part of town, left the staircase behind. But my mother was told to get out of there and move to the nice part of town. I was happy, even though there had to be an Osmond Brothers cartoon to even things out. And hey, there was Fat Albert, and he was going to tell you a thing or two about living in the slums of Philly, not Riverdale. I finally let this obsession of the light part of the staircase go, because something came out even more serious than a cartoon, more than the Jeffersons moving on up or the sad permanency of Good Times. There was the mini-series, Alex Haley's Roots. I thought the white kids in my class would finally take me seriously, have that eureka moment, understand what my people went through. Instead, they understood that my hair reminded them of that character named Kizzy. Hey, you look like Kizzy. You got hair like Kizzy. Something about the way they said that. My teacher told me to take it as a compliment. Somehow it didn't come across that way, but all right. Before there was a thing called cable TV, Netflix, or HBO, there was Gone with the Miss Scarlett, I don't know nothing about birthing babies. Deserving a good slap for her incessant crying. Miss Scarlett was so pretty and Red Butler so handsome, and their slaves listened to them and was so sad about Massa having to fight them Yankees. I went to Atlanta to visit my uncle who was living there at the time, and I had to go to the gift shop and get a postcard of Vivian Lee because she was like a friend of mine. And I tried not to notice those cold black mammy dolls, even though they were on sale. We even drove by those old plantations that became museums for folks who loved themselves some Gone with the Wind. And I noticed the little wooden cabins on the edge of the property. Funny how Roots didn't have a section in that museum shop. Before there was CNN or MSNBC, there was some story about missing black children in the background on the news in Atlanta. But all I could think about was showing my white friends my postcard. Before there was Twitter and Facebook, I was singing in concert choir in my high school along with a proud Sicilian girl who had jet black hair and olive skin. She was very popular. I remember a joke she told. This was when the three main news channels finally started talking about those kids who were disappearing. She said this joke right in front of me. What's black, young, and lives in Atlanta? Nothing. The choir members laughed and laughed. I told my mother. She did not find that funny. Before you could respond on Twitter, my mother responded in person at the Christmas concert, who approached that girl standing somewhere by herself and said something like, "We all cried for you and your people when they died in that earthquake in Italy. How dare you?" That proud Sicilian girl just sobbed and sobbed. I don't know why, but I felt sorry for her later. Before there was Phil Donahue and Oprah, we were told to get over it. Move on. Stop blaming us for your problems. Take responsibility. Stop making bad choices. Bill Cosby even said, stop giving your children names like LaQuisha and Shaniqua and pull your pants up. Standing on the stairs in the sunlight seemed to have worked wonders for Michael Jackson. Funny how he became Donny Osmond. And before there were cell phones, my scrawny brother at age 10 was viciously beaten by police when he was caught smoking weed. Before there were cell phones, after my sister got off a plane from LA to New York, she was randomly searched and seized at the airport just for traveling alone. Before there were cell phones, my white girlfriend had her first lesson in white privilege while she watched security following every move I made while we were shopping together in the Gap in Times Square. Before there were cell phones, I watched the LA riots on TV, and afterwards I would be followed every time I drove alone to and from my job just before I got on the 10 freeway. Before there were cell phones, cable, Netflix, HBO, Amazon Prime, CNN, MSNBC, and Twitter, I wonder how many George Floyds, Trayvon Martins, Philando Castiles, Gardners, Breonna Taylor's, Tamir Rice's, Sandra Bland, Michael Brown watched the Archies when they were kids. The end.
Wow, thank you so much, Melissa, for that moving performance.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Next up, we're going to have Rabbi. I think Rabbi Lucia Pizarro is next? Yes. Okay, he's here. Hi. Thank you for joining us. Hi. So I just introduced you, so feel free to take it away.
Okay. So yes, I am the rabbi at the Jewish Liberation Theology Institute. Our vision is living Judaism in solidarity with Palestine. Black Lives Matter. No qualifiers and no apologies. We need to say it more and we need to say it louder. Black Lives Matter. Jewish values challenge us to actively pursue justice and demand that justice is applied to every single human being. Judaism also calls on us not to stand idle as the blood of our neighbor is shed. The recognition that the divine image resides within every person comes with a responsibility to say, Black Lives Matter. The US is a cruel and dangerous place for Black people, and its police are racist. Canada is a cruel and dangerous place for Indigenous people and people of color, and its police are racist. The state of Israel is a cruel and dangerous place for Palestinians and people of color, and its security is racist. All racism must be opposed, and all oppressions are connected. But the connection between the state of Israel and North America goes further than their similarities in the racist colonial systems of oppression. In fact, Israel is cashing in both financially and diplomatically on systems of control it has developed through the violent oppression of the Palestinians. Israel is exporting its know-how to global elites keen to protect their privileges from both external and internal challenges. In 2005, 32 police chiefs from across Canada traveled to Israel for a training mission sponsored by Israeli police and the Israeli